Alrighty, we're about to look at Ami Horowitz's latest video, his Man on the Street video. You can view his whole video over at the Daily Wire YouTube channel. Apparently, Ami went around New York and asked a bunch of New Yorkers about whether they were ready for unity and what they thought unity meant.
I'm Ami Horowitz, and I'm here in the East Village. Now the election is over, the Democrats have been pushing the message of togetherness and unity. But unity on whose terms? How important is it the value of toleration and accepting of other people?
It's the most important thing.
Extremely important. You know, this divisiveness in this country has become terrible.
You know, be compassionate and understanding and be as supportive as you can.
I'll never understand fully why people spend all their time, trying to hate on one group.
It's very important. It's one of the most important things. I'm one of the most tolerant people because I'm one of the most empathetic people.
Do Republicans have any value at all?
No, they're delusional.
I think they're disgusting.
Yeah, you can pause it right there for a second. I mean, that's of course exactly right? And then the minute, once you say that tolerance is the highest value, once you say that tolerance is the only value, then where you go from there is that anybody who has a value system different from that as their chief value system is a horrible person. Right? See, this is the self-defeating logic of complete tolerance, is that you can tolerate everybody except somebody who you consider to be intolerant. This actually has a deeper ideological root. It goes back to Herbert Marcuse, who was a Frankfurt School theorist, a neo-Marxist theorist in the 1960s, 1970s. He actually proposed something what he called repressive tolerance. He said that in order for tolerance to flourish, you have to make sure that groups that are intolerant are not allowed to flourish, and that means that you have to shut them down and never allow them to talk again. So tolerance requires harsh-handed intolerance. That's the only way that you can actually solve the problem of intolerance.
Mindless or like
Racist.
There's a lot of immorality in them. Every living thing on this earth is a miracle.
Not Republicans!
I think it's important. Yeah, super important. Yeah.
You know, it's not always going to be fair. You know, it's not, and not everybody's going to be happy by the end. But it's important to talk things through.
Oh, it's how do we unify?
Yeah, exactly.
How important is the value of compromising to achieve unity?
It's important. I mean, you do have to compromise. You do have to compromise.
There are areas of common ground. You know, they can reach areas of common ground.
We could compromise on certain things.
There is compromise. For instance, the climate change, which is at the top of the list.
Okay.
And
so there's a compromise to be had there.
There is a compromise to be had, yes.
So, for example, like they would give on like cafe standards,
that sort of
you
thing.
would give on like fracking, that kind of thing.
Well, fracking is a touchy issue.
Can you compromise on something around climate change to give the Republicans something?
Yeah, it would depend on what it was. For instance, they want to go into Anwar, the Arctic National Reserve, to start digging that up.
So you're okay with that?
No, I am not.
Oh, okay.
No.
Is there something you're willing to compromise on climate change to give the Republicans something they want?
Well, they could. As far as carbon emissions goes.
So would you be willing to have a little more carbon emissions?
No.
Oh, you wouldn't. Okay. So there really isn't anything you're willing to compromise on.
Well, I don't know.
I'm getting the feeling that you don't fully understand the meaning of the word compromise. Can you compromise on?
Absolutely not. There is no compromise.
Okay, by the way, let's just stop it right there for a second. So first of all, a compromise on climate change is like the easiest compromise there is. So for example, many of the things that these folks are saying they oppose, like for example, fracking. Fracking is one of the chief reasons why the carbon emissions in the United States have dropped, because people are using natural gas and oil as opposed to coal-powered emissions, right? Coal is much more carbon intensive. Fracking is much less carbon intensive. And yet somehow fracking is the bad guy. If Ami were to ask these people, how do you feel about nuclear power? My guess is they would all say, no, nuclear power is extremely bad as well. Right? We can't have nuclear power. So we're going to have like windmills? He happens to be right. Like there are all these sort of words that get thrown around in politics, particularly by pundits, where people don't unpack them at all. Because once you unpack them, it becomes very clear that folks are very, very inconsistent in their own view of the world. They're tolerant except for the people they hate. And they're in favor of compromise except for the people they don't want to compromise with. They're totally in favor of decreasing government spending unless it means actually, picking programs where you decrease government spending. And they also happen to be totally in favor of defunding the police until it happens that there are no police on their block. So people don't think through with any level of consistency their own politics, obviously. Ami is doing a great job of exposing that here.
We're at a point now where there's no compromise. If you're in coal, learn how to make solar panels.
Oh, yeah, that'll work.
But that's compromise. That's as far as I go.
There really isn't room for compromise.
No.
No, 100% no.
Can you compromise on universal health care?
Well, I can't see not giving it to everyone.
Can you compromise on universal health care?
No, I mean, ultimately, no, I don't believe so.
Is there room to compromise on universal health care?
I guess not, no. No, other people, governments can do it, so I don't understand why we can't.
Right. By compromise, they mean you shut the hell up and you give in to everything that we could possibly want. Right? This is, and part of this is just the moral binary that's created by the media, is that there are not complex answers to complex questions like how do you provide healthcare? And the reality is that there are a bunch of different versions of how you provide healthcare. Right? They're largely privatized systems like Singapore. There are totally nationalized systems like the UK. There's a lot of variation and gradation in there. And the healthcare system in the United States is sort of a grab bag of various policies. So there's plenty of room for compromise on healthcare. And there has been historically a lot of compromise on healthcare. But nobody actually wants to contemplate that. So they just go with the easy one-size-fits-all answer, universal healthcare for all.
What about an issue like abortion?
Yeah, I think that one's pretty clear cut. It's yes, or I think
there's no room.
Yeah, there's
no room to compromise.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Is there a compromise that we had on abortion?
No.
No, it's their body. It's absolutely their body.
Income inequality. Should we compromise?
No, I think we should just have equality.
Can you compromise on fighting for income inequality?
That's a heavy question. A compromise. Is there a compromise for? I can't think of one right now. Honestly, the 1% of this country are just way too have too much.
No. You can't cover.
Okay, so words that we have learned from Ami that mean nothing for these folks are tolerance and compromise. So that's exciting stuff. And that is not a complete shock at all. Because, of course, people who like to think of themselves as tolerant and moderate are, in fact, very intolerant and quite immoderate, as it turns out.
On issues that are important to you, you really shouldn't compromise.
Yeah.
On issues that are important to you, you really shouldn't compromise.
Right. Yeah. Right. And issues that are right for, society and humanity. Okay, so yeah, maybe earlier I said compromising, but maybe now that you're making me see that, yeah.
Do you think that we can unify with Republicans? Is there a real way to do that?
Maybe in the far future. I don't think right now there is, though.
You don't see any way to unify Republicans? Yeah.
No, not to my knowledge.
Yeah, and that is the end of the story, right? Democrats, Joe Biden, these folks, they say unity, 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 but very often what they mean is nothing resembling unity. Because there's a real division on core values in the country right now. There's one side of the country that is basically in hock to people who believe that the United States is systemically racist, that it is filled with evil and inequality and cruelty, and that we should aim for a completely different goal. We should aim for something more European in nature. And there are folks who believe that individual liberty is paramount. And it's very hard to square that circle. So we honestly, we ought to recognize the actual real life differences. And then maybe we can have some clarification on what we actually agree on. Because we've gotten to the point where the American flag is contentious. We've gotten to the point where basic family units are contentious. If everything's contentious, then there's really no room for everybody to get along. But we're going to have to find some common ground, or this is all going to collapse in on itself very, very quickly. And I think that is what Ami is featuring right there. By the way, I think that if you asked these folks, are you friends with any Republicans? Can you name a single friend of yours who voted for Trump? My guess is they would say no. Whereas if you ask most Republicans, can you name a single person who you are friendly with who voted for a Democrat? The answer is, I'm sure, in much larger numbers, yes. I think there's a reason for that. And that is, it turns out that the folks who proclaim themselves the most tolerant are usually the most intolerant because they have deemed themselves the beneficiaries of the moral high ground. They are the architects of a better moral universe in which they get to rule from on high. Alrighty, well, that brings us to the end of this video. But if you want to see Ami's entire video, go check it out over at the Daily Wire YouTube page. In the comments, tell us what you'd like us to react to next.